and good afternoon, and assalamu alaikum to all our viewers. Welcome to the second series on an online discussion about domestic violence. On behalf of Madinah House, the National Muslim Women of Trinidad and Tobago, and FISCAL, we are presenting our second series, and our moderator today again would be Mr. Devon Ramali, and he will introduce our facilitators who will take this program into discussion. Thank you. Devon?
Hi, thank you, Wahida, and good evening to everyone. So I'd use this opportunity to introduce our two panelists this evening. We have first Mrs. Vandana Siusanka Ali, a clinical psychologist and consultant at a private practice and consultancy firm. She's also a child protection specialist with over 11 years of experience and a past lecturer of the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, as well as the University of Guyana. Mrs. Siusanka Ali's experience transcends borders, with consultancy experiences with companies focused on international development and social justice, as well as country ambassador for the Global Peace Chain and as a past government delegate at the prestigious International Visitors Leadership Program. She is also an avid speaker and facilitator, imparting information to various audiences on a range of psychosocial topics, mental health, and parenting. Above all, Mrs. Siusanka Ali considers her role as a mother to her young son her greatest achievement yet. Thank you, Vandana, for being here. Secondly, we have Ms. Michelle Padmore Bayer, a family and trauma therapist. She's also a counseling skills trainer with over a decade of successful experience in her field. She is currently a certified clinical trauma therapist with the Green Cross Academy of Traumatology and has facilitated and co-facilitated a number of trainings over the past years with the organization. In addition to her services rendered with the Green Cross, Mrs. Byam conducts her therapy service full-time. She works with families, youth, children homes, and shelters for domestic violence and trafficking victims in Trinidad. Welcome, Ms. Michelle Byam.
Thank you.
So to our audience, a brief summary and recap of the topics discussed from session 1 of this segment, titled The Masks and Cycle of Domestic Violence. The topics previously discussed would have been the types of abuse, the cycle of abuse, and the risk and protective factors. For today's session, the topic that we'd be considering and sharing a dialogue about would be understanding the experience of the survivor. Yeah, so before we get into it, Vandana, Michelle, if you have any comments, anything you would like to share, maybe a short welcome to the audience viewing.
Thank you so much, Devin. Just want to say good evening to all persons who are tuned in and persons who will view this at a later time. Just to say thank you again for being part of the solution. And by that, I mean, you are participating in a very important discussion, whether it is to gain information for yourself or to share that information with others. So I thank you for being part of that and hope that you will enjoy this very fruitful discussion.
Yes, excellent. Yes, good afternoon, good evening, good day to all. Welcome back for those who were here for the last session. Very informative, and I want to encourage you again to be in on all the sessions and just use what you hear and continue to develop yourselves according to what you see for yourself and your children. Okay, so just hang in there. Good information today as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, guys. So for the audience, what we can expect this discussion to really cover to some degree would be, again, a reminder that the topic is understanding the experience of the survivor. So things considered for conversation this evening would be red flags, the experience of the survivor, what are potential enabling factors, belief systems, intervention, and of course, some information on persons who are seeking help. So, Vandana, Michelle, I leave it to you guys, understanding the experience of the survivor.
Thank you, Devin. You know, one of the things that I think is an important starting point is to talk a little bit about what are some of the telltale signs. You know, no one wakes up one day and decides that they're going to become abusive. You know, and a relationship does not grow abusive overnight. You know, oftentimes there are subtle signs, some not so subtle as well, that come, you know, in preceding the abusive incident. And so, one of the things we want to talk about today is raising awareness about what are some of those things that you should pay attention to. And we see that, you know, there are some common behaviors where perpetrators and abusive partners may start off wanting to move very, very, very quickly into a relationship, you know, rushing into this relationship, showering, you know, the non-abusive partner with so much flattery and love, and everything seems to be really going like this is the romance of the lifetime, you know, and it almost seems like it's too good to be true. And I'm not saying that, you know, we should be pessimists. And if, you know, you're in a relationship and you're seeing things going really good, that you should be like, oh no, this looks like it could turn out to be abusive. But it's also something to pay attention to if it seems too good to be true and it really seems unreal and it also does not match up in every setting or with other persons can tell you that, you know, this person is not like this in other relationships. It's something to pay attention to. So I think that's something that's one of those kind of early red flags. Um, of course, we've known a lot about possessive and controlling behavior. So sometimes persons who survivors may be vulnerable, they've lacked love maybe in some areas of their life. And it's amazing to feel loved and accepted by someone and someone who's showing you all of this love and acceptance. And especially if you see this person really wants you just for themselves and, you know, they don't want anybody else to talk to you and, you know, making you feel so special. But really and truly, there's a line of possessiveness and controlling behavior there. You know, you might find that that person insists that you stop talking to any of your friends or your family. They might start ill speaking them as well. You know, sort of start isolating you from doing things that you enjoy, and you know, telling you that no, they want you to spend all their time with them. You know, these things are red flags. You know, because as we heard last week, isolation is one of those forms of that social abuse takes pattern from. You know, they isolate you from all of your friends, family, enjoyed activities. So that's something that, you know, I think we want to recognize along the lines of controlling and possessive behavior. I have some more to add, but I'd like Michelle to jump in here and share some of her insights as well.
Yeah, I think you know, that whole concept of romance, as you were saying, and the ability of that person to keep it flowing, you know, to keep it going. I think the the points I have, like I'm thinking about it now as you speak, and it's moving into that area of beliefs and attitudes, you know. So one of the red flags for me is that belief that if somebody really loves you, then they can get under your skin. Or if you know drive that person completely crazy, or that person can't get to you, yeah, then there's not. It means it's not love, you know. So we'll revisit that when we're talking about attitudes later on. But that is one of the red flags actually, when you see a relationship built upon that belief that this is how it's supposed to be, otherwise they don't love me. And we only discover that that is running after the person starts to go crazy over you. Go crazy meaning, you know, get extremely possessive. They want to be in every area of your life. They're pursuing. So when you have a belief that that is what love looks like, and that's how it's supposed to be, then we have a problem. So it's a red flag, but in the beginning it looks like just avid romance. Yeah. So that's just one of the things I wanted to highlight. And of course, we have a belief also that jealousy is a part of, um, a real woman or a real man's response. You're not a real man if you don't have that jealousy in you, and roused in that way. And I hear it a lot. So when you see it, you think, okay, yeah, that means it's real love. But a lot of those things point to insecurity. Yeah, a lot of possessiveness and control is really the cardboard cutout that is lived in the front, but insecurity and vulnerability is in the back. But of course, the vulnerability doesn't show directly, so you don't see it as a red flag. You see it as softness, or the person is able to show, their underbelly, that soft underbelly. But then that also is a red flag. Yeah. So those are the
Michelle,
two
as I
things I
hear
just
you,
wanted to. Mhm.
yeah, as I hear you talking about that insecurity and controlling behavior, one of the
Yeah.
frequent ways that I've seen that kind of play out is where the abusive partner is frequently calling, texting, checking up on their
Mhm.
partner, and they also want to see their phone, they want to see their messages, they want to see who they call or spoke to,
Mhm.
so that's another way. And then that control eventually manifests when that insecurity sets in into a, a very mild form of abuse, but still very damaging form, which is when the psychological abuse starts to set in. So, the criticism eventually after the romance, starts to die down. You see this partner is criticizing, putting you down. They may call you, stupid, fat, you can't do anything good, you're unattractive, nobody would ever want you. I am the only person who wants you, So again, really helping along those beliefs that help to isolate you and make you feel less than, and tether you and attach you to the abusive partner so that you feel like you really can't do without them, and who would really want you, if you were to leave.
Mhm.
I find as well that another red flag is the abusive partner refuses to take personal responsibility and accountability for their actions. And this may
Mhm.
be in the relationship and otherwise as well. There's always somebody to blame or something to blame as a result of for what they did. And when that actually culminates in an abusive act, we see how it translates into the abusive partner saying, well, I wouldn't have hit you if you didn't do so and so, or look what you make me
Mhm.
do, and there's never a sense of personal responsibility. I also find that um, an abusive partner can really they may maintain their composure around other persons, but lose all of their control around the survivor. So violent outbursts and temper tantrums, those things for small infractions. I think that's one of
Mhm.
the biggest or most obvious telltale signs as well. And it's interesting because you might find a pattern of aggressive behavior in other relationships, but for some persons, they're not aggressive in other relationships. They're very calm and composed,
Mhm.
which sometimes leads the survivor to feel like they're going crazy, because when
Mhm.
you hear from other people about this person, they seem so calm and well put together, so is it something that I'm doing to really create this problem? So it
Mhm.
really adds to the complexity that the
Yeah.
interpersonal and domestic violence relationship really, creates for
Mhm.
the survivor.
Yeah, it's very complex. And just to speak to that switch, so when you talk about how good they are in some situations, especially the social, the public ones, so the red flag is really the switch. When you notice that somebody is able to just switch like that, I mean, be attentive. That is serious, right? And in terms of the responsibility, it shows even before the abuse. In cute little things like let's say they forget the keys, or they were supposed to do something. How come you? how come you didn't, because it's like passed on to you for everything. So that what comes across as a reminder that you are there as a catchment for everything that I forget or miss, or it becomes a demand. So that is also an early red flag. But again, it looks so cute in the beginning, in terms of giving that responsibility. And in terms of the how come they're so good with other, it's about that investment of self. So let's say they had another relationship where it was more superficial, peripheral. The investment of self is not as deep. So let's say they come and they meet you and they realize, whoa, this frightens me, how much I love them or how vulnerable I feel towards them. So the more they invest themselves in that is when vulnerability increases. And to cater for vulnerability, then control comes up about, it rises up. So it is fully possible to have been in a prior relationship that was more a kind of a superficial thing, and they're cool because they're not as invested. So when you look at the rise of aggression and the rise of control and manipulation, that is to protect the investment of the heart that is in this relationship with this particular person. Yeah. So those are things that if we understand what we're seeing, it helps us to gauge whether, okay, these are things I need to look at. But then remember, nothing sort of opens up all at once and immediately, right? So you've got to really make mental notes and say, okay, I've got to look at this. And at all times know that there's no be all and end all. So, we take a mental note, but parallel to that, we also have to prepare ourselves to say, I can walk away if I need to. So what we do is we take the mental notes and then frantic. When the information becoming more and more serious, you're still not prepared to say, self, I'm getting the evidence I was looking for and I am able to walk. So then what you end up with is, information that's disturbing, but you're tired because you have not prepared yourself to say, I did observe. And now that I see what I'm seeing, admit what it is I'm seeing, and then say, okay, I can walk. You see? So it gets to a point where it becomes a sort of a scramble to leave. Yeah.
You're describing, though, I guess, a woman or a non-abusive partner who has some level of empowerment to make that conscious decision to
And
leave.
observations.
And
Yeah.
and last week we talked about financial abuse, and
Yeah.
there's this idea, I think, a stereotype that we might believe that the abusive partner has financial control, and the non-abusive partner, the survivor, may be the one who is disempowered economically and depends on the abusive partner. But there's another scenario too that happens where you may have the survivor is the one who is working, and the abusive partner is the unemployed one who is dependent on the survivor's income. And one of the red flags that is less commonly known is you may notice that your partner starts to force you to account for every single dollar that you're earning. They may take your money and run up your credit cards, or you use up your debit cards. So there is that sense of violation and control that they may exert on that sort of flip scenario that we're not always accustomed to thinking about, and that's also a form of control and coercion as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, the working partner cannot even be proud of the fact that they are the earners, because then it becomes a thing. So then you have to minimize that and sort of hand it over to them all the time, so that you don't appear to be one of those who earn and seek to feel like you're better than that partner. So it becomes a battle to even feel good about what you're doing, what you're earning. Yeah. And that's a form of manipulation as well. But again, that's adjusting for vulnerability in the abusive partner. So whether they are the one earning or not earning, that vulnerability comes in either way. You understand what I'm saying? And therefore, those techniques, those approaches, is to really shift the scale and to cater for that vulnerability that's rising up in the abusive partner. Because one of the myths is that the non-abusive one is the vulnerable, insecure one. But really, when we look at aggression and how it's used, the vulnerability lies in the one who is seeking to control, because control is an instrument. And that's the other thing. I think the other, when we could probably move into it. I don't know if you have other points, Vandana, in terms of the flags and stuff.
No. And I was just gonna go into having now experienced those red flags. What really does this person who is in the violent relationship experience?
Yeah, so my question to you guys would have been, what does this feel like? What does it feel like to be a victim? I'm trapped and I don't know what to do, and all of the questions that may be crossing them. How are these victims making sense of what is happening in real time?
I think that when you start off with the appropriate word, which is trapped, and this is also with an assumption that the survivor has reached that point of recognition that this is something they want to get out of, but they don't even know, they may not even know how. So feeling trapped, great sense of stress, having to feel like you're walking on eggshells every day because you're not sure what is the right thing to say or the wrong thing to say that will trigger off your partner. Living in fear, deep sense of depression, anxiety, all of these are consequences that many survivors experience. Sense of lack of control over their own life, feeling rejected, because during the cycle of violence, when they're not in the honeymoon phase, you're not good for anything, and everything that you do is a problem. So really feeling out of control, having very low self-esteem. Some persons may be struggling with trauma and post-traumatic stress, especially if they've been, if they've come from traumatic circumstances earlier in life. The experience of a violent relationship can be re-traumatizing. And then if they've also been in other incidents of abuse within their relationship, each one that happens is re-traumatizing over and over again. Self-blame, that's another experience because some persons may feel, how did I get myself in this? And look, especially if children are involved, what am I putting my children through? And if I were to leave, what would I be, I don't have anything better to take my children to. What kind of life will they live? The other parent might be abusive, but at least they're still providing, so there's a lot of this confusion and, you're not sure what to do. Some persons may feel very hopeless and helpless. And as a result of that, unhealthy habits may develop. So you might find that some persons, survivors, may turn to substance use as a means of coping. You might find that self-harm and suicidal behaviors emerge as a means of coping and as a means of an emotional outlet. So and then aggression as well. So they may become very aggressive towards their children, because they are struggling emotionally to cope. And so if you feel dysregulated, it's that aggression comes out in all circles, and particularly to those who cannot retaliate, you know. Or you may have aggression back towards the partner, but that's a dangerous form of aggression. So all of these are some of the ways that I've encountered survivors experiencing their violent relationship.
Yeah, and
And
just
Vandana, sorry, Michelle, just one
now, just
question.
gonna add that sort of zombie existence.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, the zombie
And
life where they just don't engage with anything and anybody.
very quickly, just to put something that crossed my mind to both of you all, um, and if you can just comment briefly on it, um, when the relationship, in fact, is a means of coping for the victim, So and then Michelle, that ties into what was shared before, your thoughts on control. So it's sort of like perfect Lego pieces, right? Fitting together.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And
And
any
Devin, are
comments?
you asking? Yeah, are you asking about when the relationship is a means of coping for the survivor?
Correct.
Yeah. I feel like that's like the perfect storm, because it really now puts the survivor in a really deep, because here you are, this relationship that you perhaps have a lot of hopes and dreams and beliefs tied into to help you through some other difficult experience or some other damaging beliefs that you have. That coping tool, which is the relationship, is now the damaging tool. So it really spirals, I think, the survivor in an even darker space of depression and anxiety if the very thing that you're hoping will help you is hurting you. And this is where we really try to help survivors see exactly that the relationship is not helping you, it's hurting you, and that there is a need to develop alternative coping strategies. And your coping cannot be through, another person. It has to be through you, and something that serves you. Michelle, any thoughts around that? 'Cause that's a really complex issue.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Michelle. Yeah.
Yeah. And just still surrounding that, caught up. One of the things that takes the longest for that survivor or the non-abusive partner to arrive at is to see that partner as an abusive partner, to change the way that they would have viewed them. Because remember, if the relationship is the solution, then there's hero adoration, and there's that hero vibe, right? So to see them differently and to see them as an abusive partner takes the longest time. It takes the longest time. And then tying into that, one of the reasons why the relationship is the solution is because many are trying to flip their past through this person. And that means that they have to hold on to them to have that happen. So you find that it takes them a really, really long time to give up that dream of walking away from what they grew up with and creating this utopia sort of life with this person. And to walk away from that is very, very, very difficult, because in one shot, you've got to see your hero as a threat, and you've got to give up the life that you intended to flip your past with. And those things are tough. And so what you suggested, Devin, is really those are the dynamics underneath it, and that's why the relationship may seem as if it's the solution, but it's not. There's no substitute for personal growth, and you flip your own past and not through another person. You've got to grow yourself. Somebody can't grow for you. You've got to open your own eyes, clear your own lens. And these are all hard things that we prefer this romantic partner to do for us. But they're not going to. They will put a lens on that suits them. Yeah. That makes them look rose-colored. But that is your responsibility to do. So anytime we're talking about the relationship is the solution, that is what that survivor or a non-abusive partner is trying to accomplish, but it will not succeed. And it takes a while and a lot of violent behavior for them to come to that realization and accept it.
Yeah, I'm in agreement, Michelle. Thank you for that. Question though, so we have the abuser and we have the victim. Now these are in many cases parents. How do children fit into this? What do children experience? How are children used as pieces on the board, on the playing board, you know. So if you guys would like to comment on that.
You know, the experience of children, it's very damaging living in a home where there is violence. And a lot of times people say, I'm staying for the sake of the children. But you have to consider that sometimes staying is a lot more damaging to children than separating. And we see that some of the effects of children, you know, they are living in a home where all they see is violence. Children's first agents of socialization are their parents and that primary relationship that they see between their parents. So this is what they're learning is appropriate. This is what the female role is and the male role is in the home. This is how they are being socialized as to what is acceptable in a relationship. So children also, so that gender socialization, that process of understanding how relationships work, that is what's being communicated to children. We find that children who also live in violent homes, they may struggle with some of the same effects that we just described with survivors. So they may live with post-traumatic stress, they may develop depression, anxiety, and children's inner stability is reflected in their behaviors. So if they are going through something, some form of emotional turmoil, it will be reflected in behaviors that are disruptive. So you may see a child who is very aggressive, has impulse control issues, you know, they're destructive, they have problems in relationships with others. You may see as well that a child on the flip side becomes very withdrawn, has their own self-esteem issues, you know, so you see that continuum of difficulty with managing emotions and managing behaviors as a result of living in an unstable environment.
Yeah. Michelle, any comments?
I think Vandana covered it well. The preoccupation of the parent. And again, I just wanted to remind again, for those who were not there in the beginning of our first session, we just want to put out there that we know that both men and women are abused, they experience abuse, right? So sometimes when we describe it, it comes across as if, you know, we vilifying, you know, and it comes out in that male aspect as the abuser. And I just wanted to say again that because of how the incidents are revealed to us, you know, the female victims or survivors are the ones who come out. You know, men don't frequently come out. So in our experience, you know, so when we're talking and that he or that she or how we describe it seems to be leaning, you know, so next week, hang in there, come on, because we're going to deal with the abusive partner, male or female, right? And the dynamics do remain the same when you get to the foundation layer, right? The dynamics do remain the same. So, you know, as we're thinking about parents with the children, you know, mothers are the main caregivers, but they are fathers as well who are caregivers, right? So as we talk about it, so yeah, I think Vandana was pretty good in terms of outlining, which she's very good at, you know, outlining the features and the characteristics, and just that awareness of what the child is going through. What I want to say is that children cannot carry this. One of the tendencies of the non-abusive partner is because it's so heavy and they're not present. So you find that scrolling. So you find children are raising themselves because the non-abusive partner, the survivor, is not able. It's too much going on, too much change, too much shattering of my dreams, shattering of how I saw my partner. I'm physically hurt. I can't get up. I have body pains. I have children to see about. So then you have parentifying of children, right? So they're not present, and that does something to children. And on top of that, children have to become parents because the babies are crying, and the none of the survivor is there trying to survive, either scrolling on the phone continuously, and the children are seeing needs to be met, and they rise up, and that's what we call parentified children, right? So they are taking on roles to mix baby milk and to change nappies and to prepare them, all of this before they go to school, especially when it happens at that age range, right? So we have children who are forced to mature, but in task, they are still children here, and they cannot carry this. So when that survivor is tempted to just look away and behave as though it doesn't exist, it does exist, and the children are carrying it, but they are not able, and they will be changed. Yeah. So that is one of the things we always have to look at. The effect on the children. So many people think that because the children are not being hit, then they are protected and then they're good. So they could help me being the survivor of this whole thing, you know? So it's very heavy on children, and don't feel for a minute because they are handling these tasks, they are able to carry this. They cannot. They cannot. And it really does come to a head at some point.
One of the ways that I know a lot of children get involved in this experience as well is as a comfort to either parent. So where they may be the person that the survivor goes to, to tell them about what they're going through and how hard of a time they're having, and almost looking for that support and counsel from a child. And then also the abusive partner venting to the children about, the problems in the house and how, their other parent good for nothing and, all of these other things. So the child becomes the recipient of a lot of this overload of inappropriate information. And they don't know, they don't have the emotional capacity to know what to do with this information. And they, as children, also carry loyalties to their parents. No matter what parents do to children, there is this innate desire to belong with their own parents. So children have that loyalty. And so hearing these, differing views, it really plays on the psyche of children. That's one of the ways that I see it happening a lot. And then another way, Devin said, our children used as, pieces on the chessboard. And that's exactly what happens sometimes, where children may be used to threaten the other partner. That if you leave me, I will keep the children. You will never get the children, and you will never get to see them again after that too. And oftentimes that keeps survivors within the violent relationship because they know that they may not be able to get a job. If they were to move, they will not be able to afford a place that can accommodate their children. They'll have to wait till, they find an income. And the threat of losing their children and never seeing their children, even as illogical as it might be, in practice, you know, uh, the chances of a court, awarding custody of children to a violent person, especially if that person can be proved as being violent, are very slim. But that does not register with the survivor because they are living in a space of fear and they are being controlled. A lot of mind manipulation is happening as well, so that fear of losing the children is often used as a threat, and children also get caught up because they may also hear that and say, well, okay, they don't want their parent to leave the other one because they don't want to live in two places and they don't want to never see their mother or father again. And, so they get caught up in this whole thing, and all of that adds up to the guilt and the shame and the fear that the survivor feels if they have to take a decision to leave.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, guys. Thanks for that. So if we could move forward a bit, I'm wondering, so we have two persons. We have the abuser and we have the victim. Each of these persons have some support system in some way, some person they may be speaking to, some affiliation. This affiliation can even be in, with attitudes and beliefs, past experiences, and so on. So the question that I have is, um, how does the situation, the attitudes, the beliefs, and the responses from other people potentially enable the abuser to continue abusing, and on the other side of it, enable the victim to continue hiding that this in fact is happening?
Yeah, yeah. Devin, this is a hot button one for me, because family and friends and our support circle are supposed to be there to support us, you know, and we're told that, that these are people that we can turn to in times of need. And sometimes when we are in this context of domestic violence, our support circle in some situations turn out to be anything but. Some of it is directly just harmful, and some of it is well-intentioned help that just comes out extremely insensitive and, lacks compassion. So you see beliefs that say, for example, if you're married or if you're in a relationship with this person, you can't come back home. You have to stay there and face whatever it is you have to face. You can't come back home. That shame you will bring to our family if anybody see that you leave and come back. That's an enabling belief, and a belief or an attitude that allows the abuse to continue and will have a survivor staying and hiding the fact that they're being abused because they know they cannot come back home to their parents. People who use religion, right? And I know this is a very sensitive area, right? But sometimes we use religion to justify why a person should stay in a marriage that is dysfunctional, because perhaps divorce is not accepted, or breaking your vows, or the steps that you took, you made a commitment, in in times of good and in times of bad, so these types of things people are reminded of sometimes when they make a decision to leave, and sort of, guilt them into staying because they will be punished, and they will face religious consequences as a result of that. Holding beliefs, I think, as well, that adhere to very rigid gender rules and gender stereotypes. So, for example, saying that, you know, it is a man's duty to work and contribute home, and it's a woman's duty to please their husband, and you have to keep the home, and you don't ever you don't ever argue with your husband if he tells you something. There are certain beliefs, and let me just clarify that. I mean, we're in a woke society, right? So I have to be mindful and say that, look, we are I'm in no way saying that there aren't there isn't room for negotiating new types of gender rules, and so there is that. But there are some beliefs that really contribute to subservience and keep people in a position that prevent them from getting help, and where those gender rules and stereotypes uh support that, it becomes unhelpful when you're in a violent relationship. And I'll just contribute one more enabling belief, which is, I think, sometimes persons in our support circle share information with the abusive partner. So the survivor may come and confide in a friend or a family member and talk about, what they're going through, and, they really need to get out and what their plan is. And this person may go back and tell the abusive partner what the survivor is planning or what they're going through, you know, therefore removing all opportunities for a safe exit, you know, putting the person in the place of getting themselves in a fight might happen at home, when the abusive partner finds out what the survivor is thinking. So these are some of the attitudes and beliefs that are really not helpful, and allows the abuse to really flourish.
Yeah. And another attitude is the significant others of, in the survivor's life, especially carrying over traits and saying, this is why so and so. So then we could see why the abusive partner does XYZ. So a common one is your mouth, right? Let me put it that way, your mouth. So remember, growing up, they would know you in a particular way, right? You're always talking back, your mouth, you're this, you're that, you're the other, right? So what then they do is that they attribute that to the reason that you're getting in these difficulties. So when the abusive partner shows up, they agree with them. They say, well, we couldn't deal with it. So, right? So it's like, it's because of this that is happening. And when you have that sort of cause and effect beliefs, um, being tied to personality, being tied to who you are as a person, then it's sealed. How are we? How? So there, we don't have responsibility as a family members because we couldn't cope with it either. So if you could deal with it, and that's what you had to do, you do what you had to do. You understand? And that is very real, and that is one of the most common ones. Because as survivors attempt to resist that instrument of the mouth, yeah. So when it ties into a way that you have been known to be as a child growing up, then it's a done deal. And they do everything short of praising the abusive partner for saying, well, listen, if you could control it, we couldn't control it. But if you can, do what you had to do. And it's like a unspoken permission that is given. You see? Mm. So we need to get away from that. And that happens anytime somebody knows you a long time. Yeah, we know, them just pick up the cell phone and go and don't say anything. Who are like that? So that attitude, it's both an attitude and belief that it is some inherent flaw that showed up since you were a child. That is the equal sign that is causing this abuse to happen. So all you had to do is stop that. And then that mirrors the mentality of the abusive partner, which we will get into next session. So then it's like a whole teamwork that results in lack of support for the survivor, for the non-abusive partner. That is big. It's hard to shake because the loved ones, the family members and the long-term, people in your life, they swear they're right because they have seen this thing from day one. And you can't blame nobody because they can't put up with that. And it's very insidious and very dangerous. And I can't tell you how many times I would talk about we have to get away from making those cause and effect, especially when it's tied to features of self. That seems to seal the deal. Okay, so I just wanted to add that.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. So, two-part question, or just throwing in the essence of time. Is it possible to recover from domestic violence? And second part, what are some of the possible intervention and treatment modalities that persons should consider should they be in that situation? And of course, here in Trinidad and Tobago, where can they get this help from?
It is 100% possible to recover from being in a violent relationship. It is not what has happened to you that matters. It is what you choose to do about it. And it's hard to choose to do something different when there are multiple factors that trap you in the relationship, but you can recover. But it starts with first believing that you can leave and that you have the power to do so and control over yourself. So it begins with recognizing the patterns, gaining the knowledge, like what we're doing in these programs here, to understand what are the signs, what are the symptoms, what is the pattern, and to recognize your partner as being the abusive partner. Persons can seek counseling to help them be able to cope with, what they've been going through, and sometimes that counseling is helpful to devise a plan to help them move forward with their life as well. Moving forward and recovering from a life of domestic violence also involves devising a safety plan. And that safety plan is multifaceted. It involves while you are in the relationship, deciding what is your survival plan while you remain until you can leave. How do you stay safe while you are there? When you have to, while you're in the relationship as well as when you leave, planning out exit routes. How are you going to get to and from work or school? Who are the persons that you can count to have in your that you can call in an emergency? Devising your exit strategy. So the day that you decide to leave, what is the plan? And you have to have all the systems in place for that. Setting your finances in order in advance of leaving, you know, um, having your emergency contacts, your emergency bag, your safe places that you're going to go to, code words, all of these things, which, are far too much for us to cover right here. But also, really having a solid plan in place for leaving, because leaving is not easy at all. It's very easy. It's dangerous, one. It's risky, and it's easy to come back. So it has to be a plan that is solid. Um, and I'll let Michelle share her views before we get into where can persons get help when they've made that decision that they are in an abusive relationship and they want support, either to cope and survive and get through this experience or to leave.
Okay.
Michelle?
Well, two things I really want to speak to, and that is the children in all of this while you're preparing to leave, and the safety plan, and really how that exit. Many times you hear survivors saying, little by little, piece by piece, I'm moving out. Now, what I want to say is that planned exit is based on the idea that you can actually move little bits that will not be noticed, and that is not true. That abusive partner notices everything about you. Now, every change, every piece of clothing that's different, every item that you treasure that's different, because when that move is planned, you start moving the things you value. That abusive partner notices everything. So in dealing with survivors, that approach, every time I hear it, that is something I address immediately, because they imagine that they can over a month move little by little. So that appearance of disregard is just that. That abusive partner notices everything but will say nothing. So if you feel that you can make 4 trips and then on the 5th one you will do the last move, it may really be the last, because they will be waiting. And that is what happens. So by the time we hear it on the news, it's because there was a tiptoeing out with this, with that you think is not being noticed. Everything is noticed. Yeah. So they are gauging while you're moving out little bits. So when they feel that the next move will be the last, that is when you're met with that confrontation. But it comes across as if that was the single event. It was not, right? So I just want to urge those listening, if you're in that situation, that is even more dangerous. The focus cannot be on material things. It depends on the threat level, right? As well. But please do not feel that you are not being noticed when you're tiptoeing out with 2 things this week, 4 things next week. And because you are removing the things most important to you, that person also knows what's important to you and they will see. Yeah. So that increases the danger level, right? So if it is that you are in a situation of that level of threat, material things cannot be, you make one move and do not return for the little purse that your grandmother gave you that you can't live without, and the little, yeah. So that's one thing I just wanted to say. One move and do not return for any singular item, right? So that is just one point. And the other thing, I hope I remember what it was. Right? The children with the plan. So what happens is you sort of working with your children. The best way to come at it is with from a kind of habit change point of view. There are key tags, there are key labels on things. So once you come to that child and say, okay, don't tell don't tell this person this, right? But we doing this. Don't tell that. You see, that tagline is really what causes this spill of information. So when you are bringing your children into the safety plan, you come at it from an angle of these are just new habits. You're growing up, right? So let's move towards independence. Let's move towards contingency. I'm just teaching you new skills, etc. Because remember that abusive partner is coming to say, all you're keeping secrets, right? And as that is said, that tagline is what brings the child, because then the child will remember being told, don't tell this one that. And they react. And that is how that abusive partner knows that something is going on, and then they go in for that information. And of course, as we said earlier, that child is not able to carry that. So they spill, right? They come out with it because they've been asked a direct question, what to do, and then there's some kind of manipulation or aggression. And then, of course, the survivor is angry because the child sold them out. So as you bring your children into your safety plan, remove the labels, remove the keeping of confidence statements. Yeah, you just coming at it. It's like if you're seeing what will be needed in this phase that we're going into, and you just say, I realize that you don't know how to pack your bag for yourself, right? Because of course there are parents doing all these organizational things for children up to quite an old age, right? So you say, you're getting older. Let me show you how to, so that the child does not bring all these new skills under the label of safety plan that we have to keep secret. So nothing is activated. And that is really how that sellout occurs, because you're giving them a tagline. And when the abusive partner says, I sure so and so, you're working against me, and that reaction, child can't handle that. They cannot, right? So that's what I wanted to just mention as we bring children into that safety plan. No labels, no taglines, no headings, no don't tell this one, don't tell that one. You know how you just talk? When you go by the person or the person family, or don't run your mouth and things like that, because then they're carrying something, and if it's mentioned, they cannot stop that automatic reaction that they will show. And that's how sellouts happen, right? So I just wanted to bring out those 2 things that introduce it as new skills you're being taught, because schools out there, no easy place either. You know what I'm saying? So they will need it anyway to survive. So you're saying, okay, you're getting older now. Let me show you how to do this. Let me show you how to do that. Always keep some money on your phone. Social media might be interesting. Don't use up all your data. Learn how to pack this. Come on, suppose you need to move suddenly, school, and really just introduce skills unlabeled. And that will reduce the chances of sellout and your plan being observed or revealed. Okay, so I just wanted to add those 2 things.
Thanks a lot,
Devin, you
Vandana.
asked.
Sure.
about the resources, and I think that's an important thing for us to
Yeah.
share with our listeners and viewers. So anybody who needs to get help with a domestic violence situation, there are at the various police stations, gender-based violence units. These are specially trained police officers who can receive your call and take your report and direct you to the necessary safe houses and resources. So if you call a police station, you can always ask, or you visit, ask to speak to one of those particular officers. There's also the 800 SAVE number, which is the domestic violence abuse hotline. There's also the Coalition Against Domestic Violence. This is an NGO that specifically deals with this issue, and they may be able to connect you with certain resources. And there's also the Victim and Witness Support Unit attached to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, who can provide a certain level of psychosocial support for a survivor and their children who've been through an experience like this. So, Devin, I'm sure you will speak a little bit more about how persons can get this information after this program, but it's very important for people to stay connected and to have access to these resources and to know that help is available.
Great. Thanks, guys. Vandana, I appreciate that. Just to add a couple more, specifically with what Michelle would have ended with in relation to children, there is the Children Authority and their hotline numbers. For legal matters, there is Legal Aid. We also have the Rape Crisis Hotline, which can render some psychosocial support. And of course, the Madinah House, who is hosting this discussion this evening. So for our listeners and our viewers, the contact information as well as the resources will be shared on the Meet Madinah House Facebook page. Should you guys have a need to acquire those said contacts. And we're out of time, guys. I just want to wrap up by saying thanks a lot for the contributions made by both Van and Michelle. I truly appreciated this evening the live descriptions that you guys made an effort to impart to the listeners and viewers. And we hope to see in we invite everyone, to continue with us on this journey next week, Thursday again, between the hours of 6 and 7 p.m. Next week, Thursday, of course, being the 5th of December. Yeah. Wahida, back to you. Take care.
Hi, is next Wednesday would be live. Please God, between 6 and 7.
Apologies, right? Wednesday.
Okay, and I will put out the list of helpline numbers on the Facebook page. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. And I'll see you all next week. Praise God. Take care and be safe.
Excellent.
Good night and
Take care.
assalam.
Bye. Bye.